Welcome to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast, brought to you by the Wealthy Speaker School. This is the podcast dedicated to people who want to speak more as a way to build their income and grow their business. Hey, welcome everyone to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast. I'm your host, Jane Atkinson, and today we have someone who's back by popular demand to talk about how to really scale your business, like seven-figure scale. Thank you for joining us again, Greg Schinkel.
It is such a pleasure, Jane.
So I wanted to just start talking about this whole idea of scaling, but really, we've had you on the show before. We'll put the past podcast in the show notes, but catch us up to where you are today.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think, well, I know where we are today, and that is that we're continuing to attract some of these large opportunities. And we most recently got another large consumer packaged goods company to sign on with us for next year, and that again could be a multi-year arrangement. And then two of our other really big accounts that we have, which would be kind of multi-$100,000 a year customers. And so they're continuing and expanding our relationship as well. So where we're at is I've added more virtual resources to the team, and added a business manager and a customer experience manager, and then added more instructors to help deliver these programs. So that's kind of where we're at now, is we're trying to make the business even less dependent on me and more on the team.
And I love this because what you've really seen yourself do is move into this leadership role in your business that really, when we first met, I don't know if it was 10 or 15 years ago, I don't know if you would have imagined yourself coming off the road the way that you have. Could you see that happening all that long ago?
No, and then of course, like you said, the past podcasts kind of tell the whole journey. But if you go back to just after you and I met, which would have been around 2004, the business really changed at that point, because I went from having some staff and we weren't making any profits, and then I decided I would go the route of making myself the expert and go on the road and just focus on me delivering, keep all the overheads down. And then now that we've sort of getting into these bigger projects, now I've kind of taken a different turn back to using a team, but this time very differently structured than it would have been the first time around.
Right. And when we first started talking to each other back in the day, you were doing a lot of topics and you decided to pick a lane, which I think is worthy of mentioning, because how important do you think that has been in getting you where you are today?
Well, I don't think anything is more important than that, because, like you said, we used to do sales training, customer service training, leadership and management training, and, probably a topic list of 30 different topics, I would say.
Right.
And then, we could talk about whether it's genius when you discover your lane or the lane helps discover you. What we found is that the best contracts and the best customers for us were the ones where it was a manufacturing customer, and usually at the supervisor level, and even one level lower than that, down to what we might call a team leader or a lead hand or a working leader level. So those couple of breakthroughs then allowed us to go really deep within this niche within, and I'll call it's manufacturing, it's distribution, and it's operations.
Right.
So, these are companies that are running plants producing products, or they're a distribution company moving those products around to different sites.
Right. And I know there's been the odd retail contract that has come through, kind of a different scope of work. But for the most part, what we're talking about here is training, not keynoting, and that's perfectly fine. But for those of you who have started out your business as a keynoter, I really want you to be thinking about whether or not you're leaving money on the table by not going deeper to solve problems long term for your client. Did you think about that early on? I know sometimes you would do a keynote just to feed the training business, but what do you think about that? Because I know in our industry that's happening quite a bit.
Well, I think, It's funny because I remember talking, first of all, because I've been in the training business pretty much since the beginning. And then
Hmm.
I think if you're a trainer, you dream of keynotes because you look at it because you say, oh, instead of doing a day or 2 days or 3 days of content, I can deliver an hour and make maybe the same as I might from a training day. So I think if you're a trainer, you look at keynotes and say, that's the way to go. I think if you're a keynoter, you look at training and said, wow, that's the way to go because instead of just selling one speech, I could sell like a multi-month or multi-year contract. But each has its pros and cons
Right,
because I think we now know that keynoting isn't really as simple as an hour on the stage.
right.
There's the travel to and from. Training
Research.
training is can be a grind, honestly, because of the amount of hours involved in delivering workshops.
Right.
So I think in the end, you probably have to figure out what you love and how you can add value, and of course, what customers want to buy from you. Um, I think keynoters who started doing multi-day training programs might find that a bit of a grind, but
Hmm.
it could be a nice supplement, or they might find, like I have, that other people may have the talent to deliver some of those training projects while you stay doing what you really love, which is the keynoting, and then you're not leaving money on the table potentially of the customer really wanting something to drive the value.
Right, right. And clients have come to me in the last little while and said, I need to know how I should license something. Somebody wants to take my book and my material and they want to start speaking on it. Do you have any advice for somebody like that, Greg? Because that's not a world that I've spent a lot of time in, but I have had lots of people that I know do it.
Right. Well, I think we've certainly looked at and executed some licensing agreements. Licensing other trainers to deliver your stuff, that isn't the way that I've typically gone. And what I've heard people say is it's probably way better to license an end user customer who they're going to use it for their own team to maybe deliver the training internally. Um,
Right.
I wouldn't, I mean, I use subcontractors to deliver our training on our behalf. So I'm not licensing it to them. They're just using our IP. I think we should be flexible and open to lots of different arrangements. I think the only reason why licensing your content to another consultant to deliver, as long as you've got the right agreements in place and you can retain ownership and control over the intellectual property.
Right.
Um, I don't also tend to sweat it too much whether my team delivers it exactly the way that I would deliver it. I really trust them to be competent in delivery, and as long as they're getting the key points and taking the customer through the journey, they can use their own, obviously, stories, examples. That's what makes it more effective anyway.
Right, right. And I know some of my tribe have gone on to work with you, Greg. And so thank you for giving some of them opportunities to expand, the number of engagements that they're doing every year. That's wonderful. So, okay. When we talk about you have really drilled it down first from a whole bunch of topics to leadership, then from leadership to frontline leadership, and then down to this manufacturing sector. And I know it's not that specific, but really all of your outbound efforts are now designed to attract those people. So where do you go to find the business?
We're lucky right now is that most of the business finds us. So some of these, even these really large projects, they are usually starting with a Google search. So we put out a lot of content. That was a change that I made a few years ago after knowing I should have been doing it probably 3 years before that, and
Yeah.
then finally getting to it, and now relentlessly pumping out content every week that's really targeted to that business. So interestingly enough, that when we do get contacted by some of these large enterprises, and they're casting a fairly wide net on Google to find things, but what
Hmm.
we're hearing is that we're one of only two companies, or maybe only one of three companies that they found that specializes in the particular market niche. The most recent one that we won, it was down to us and one other company. The other company didn't even go to meet with them. Not that every project needs a face-to-face meeting, but certainly if the customer wants it, we're going to get on a plane and go there. It's worth it. But the
Right.
other company decided not to send anyone down for that meeting, and so even that put us up a level above that. Now, what is changing for us, and I know that we covered this probably in one of our previous podcasts, when you get your first big project, it feels a bit lucky at the time, and oh my gosh, this isn't going to happen again. This is like
Right.
catching lightning in a bottle. And then when you get your second and your third, and then you start to say, oh, okay, so we're actually in this market now.
Yeah. We're
Yeah.
doing it.
And we're getting it by inbound contacts, right? So we're not really doing much outbound. So one of the things, the reasons I've added to the team lately is because now we are going to make sure that our message is getting out to other companies. And it's maybe not as easy or as fun when you have to go hunting for it, but that's what most people have to do. And I think if we did some of that, we could probably, the goal right now is to actually 10 times the business.
Right.
And make it more self-managing.
And interesting to note that what got you to the first million will not be the thing that gets you to the 10th, right?
Right.
You're going to need a whole different things. Google AdWords, are those in the mix at all for
Yeah.
you then?
Yep. So we use lots of advertising in different, and you know what? I still view it as an experiment because it's
Hmm.
really tough to know exactly the things to spend money on. So we spend money on LinkedIn ads, Facebook, Google AdWords. We do pretty well on the organic search
Right.
results through Google
Because of all
within
your
that.
content,
Yeah,
right?
the supervisor training in manufacturing or some version of that draws most of our inbound leads. And then, we use a CRM system. We happen to use Infusionsoft or Keep now, I guess it's called. And
Hmm.
it's a pretty sophisticated system. And, we weren't using it maybe as well as we could have, which is probably very common for users of that platform. But,
Right.
like anything, the team keeps developing it and moving forward. So we cast a fairly wide net. We're willing to pay for leads. We actually have referral sources that send us
Hmm.
some business as well, and we pay for those. Yeah, I mean, as most people in our business probably know, the selling of the job is probably the biggest barrier for most people. They can go out and deliver the project, the
Right.
keynote, the training program, but it's always about keeping your sales funnel
Full.
full enough to drive whatever goals you need to make.
Right, right. Now, okay, so I have an idea for you backing up to what you just talked about. If all of the clients that you brought in, if you got to your key person, maybe who signs the checks, finding out what association they belong to, some sort of manufacturing owners or something like that, is that a possibility for you to then put yourself in front of those groups only,
Yeah,
right?
so that's actually one of the next evolutions that would multiply the results
Hmm.
is because we also do public workshops, and the issue with public workshops, and probably most of the people listening to the podcast have probably had this experience. It can be as much effort to try to get a public workshop full as it can to be to sell a multi-hundred participant training project. At least in our experience, it's been almost equally difficult.
Right.
That said, we know that people who get exposed to our message and the practicality of it tend to want to do business with us. So that begs the question, how do you get more of these, in our case, senior HR people and or manufacturing and operations managers and leaders? How do you get them into a session where they get that aha, like this is a really relevant material for our team.
Hmm.
And so we're going to do some experimenting in the year ahead here where we're going to run some informational type sessions and probably informational type webinars just to see if we can educate people within the target market about what makes us special.
I'm smiling over here, Greg, because you and I both go to Dan Sullivan's strategic coach. I go to Toronto, you go to Chicago. And I'm hearing, one of the things that I've benefited from is just watching their operation,
Yeah, it's quite
right?
amazing.
And I'm thinking that you are probably benefiting as well from watching their operation.
Yeah, I
They
mean,
have over 100 staff, right? So that's not where I'm going in my own mind, but you might be thinking more along those lines.
yeah, I'm thinking about that model, and I mean, I participate in it just to get my own mind thinking much bigger and less about doing and tapping into a team that has the capabilities to really move things forward. But yeah, I watch them from two lenses. One is how it helps my business, but also just admiring how they run their business.
Right.
And it is worth emulating, I think, for a number of us who are in the training. business or coaching business.
Space, exactly. Now, let's talk about when you scale, because, like you said, you've done it completely different than you used to do it, with a lot of overhead and maybe people on the payroll. I'm not exactly sure how you did that. And so now, as you scale, only when you get a new contract are your costs going to go up, and so you're covering all of your costs as you go. Talk a little bit about your costs being variable.
Yeah, it's something I learned the hard way, right? Because in the past growth spurt, and I would say going back to the 90s, when we kind of deviated a bit from the leadership message and went into quality consulting and quality systems under ISO 9000, we grew the team and added a lot of salary and commission, fixed salaries for the consultants. And what that meant is that we had this huge number, and I say it was huge because back then it definitely was huge, and even today it's pretty admirable. We had to do like 150,000 a month just to break even, and that's because of all the fixed cost.
Right.
Now, all the cost except for our small, like we have my wife and I in the business, and my daughter's in the business, but everybody else is really on contract. So
Right.
and so here's the thing. On contract, you're paying, at least I do, I pay more than I would if it was a salary, but I'm foregoing the downside risk because, the other thing is we had one big contract where it was close to $1 million a year just in the one contract. And the next year, change of management thinking, it like went away. So what do you do when you're used to bringing in $1 million in revenue? And if you had, three or $400,000 of delivery cost fixed, you'd be really in an ouch moment, which is what really sunk us back in the mid 2000s. So my view of it is when we win business, we're willing to pay quite well for the subcontracted resources. And that's because if I get sick or the business softens or, we hit a deeper recession, the cost structure can go back down and we won't be worried about paying our bills or, even making a decent income. Quite frankly, so it's about sharing the gravy on the top end. So yeah, everything I do, all the marketing work is subcontracted, all the operational support is subcontracted, all the delivery people are subcontracted,
Mm-hmm.
and I just have realized that I want to be out there delivering less. I still get a thrill in front of an audience, but I actually get more of a thrill doing the sales efforts than I do delivering the content.
And that's one of the things that you've learned in Strategic Coach is what your unique ability is and how to make sure that you are working within your unique ability the majority of the time. And I think when people are first starting out, as soon as they can see some ability to afford it, they need to start getting those $25 an hour jobs off of their desk immediately. Like that is job one. 10 years ago, I never would have given that advice.
Right. I agree with you that you start out initially and say, okay, what are all the things that either take my time and energy that I could outsource relatively easily to someone else? And in fact, this was something I had to learn, and you've heard the concept through the coach program. Is always ask yourself who, not how. I used to always get stuck thinking, how am I going to get that done? How am I going to get that book done? How am I going to get this done? And now instead
Who?
I go, who could get this done? Who could I find to do this? And those people that you think you're dumping your tasks onto, they
Yeah.
love doing those things.
Yeah.
They're really good at it,
Yeah.
and they actually do it better than you, or in my case, better than me.
Mm.
And so they're doing what they love. I get to do more of what I love. So I think you start initially with the lower level tasks. But what I'm realizing now is I'm taking some of the higher level tasks, and I'm also jobbing those out because in the end, I'm not ready. I don't really want to sink salary into hiring a general manager or a CEO, but I'll pay similar wages to someone on a contract to deliver some of that same
Right.
service.
Right. And if you're basing it, if your business is going up and down in terms of revenue, then it can be, then that person's job will go up and down with the revenue as well. I just sat down with Monica, my fabulous assistant, who will be listening to this. So shout out to Monica. Woohoo!
Yay.
And we were going through her job description, which has expanded dramatically. And I kept saying, are you sure you love that? Are you sure you love that? And I think one of the things that we need to do as leaders is, number one, make sure all of our people are working within their unique abilities as well, but also pay them well. And I don't know that that's what breeds loyalty. It's just the fact that you want to see them do well is what breeds loyalty. And I love your concept from that. We really have to be fearless sometimes as leaders, don't you think?
Yeah, and I agree with you that although there's nothing quite as attractive as a low price, I guess, whenever you're buying something. But I've tended to, even in the work that I subcontract out, at least what I've been told by the folks that I'm subbing out to, is that my rates are certainly considerably higher than what they might get from a seminar company or something like that.
Right.
But, I've always used the view, what would I deliver for if someone called me up and I was slow and I needed some work? I don't want to pay anyone really less than what I would appreciate getting if it was on the other way around. And when it comes to administrative resources and help, again, it's to me, it's all about the results and all about making my life easier, keeping it so that I don't get the frustrations that happen when there's a logistical problem. I just want people to take care of those things, and I give them a great deal of freedom and do my absolute best not to micromanage that process,
Right.
or even to interfere with what they do, or to scold them when they screw up, because inevitably there will be mess ups, and then they're expensive, but quite frankly, they're expensive if I do them. So the fact that somebody else did it, I do my best to not freak out about those things,
Mm-hmm.
because everyone's going to be learning as you go along. I just found that if you're willing to pay more, you usually get what you pay for, and their teams stay intact. I think if you're going to pay less, what you're going to deal with is the turnover or the attractiveness of some other project to that person. So.
Right, exactly. Well, I really do think that there's a level of fearlessness that we seem to in order to get to the next level. So let's talk about the difference that you see, let's say, getting to your first 5 million, and if you'd like to share what your gigantic goal is, that's when you 10 times, is it 50?
No, actually, for
Where are
me,
you
Jane, for
where
me,
are you
Jane, it
going?
was it was tough to get between 1 and 2,
Okay.
and my 10 times goal is 15. But the
15. Okay.
but the um, the larger goal beyond that is, I think it could be 100. Now that's like obviously a really big stretch,
Yeah.
and as you know, one of the concepts in coach is to try to make your future bigger than your past.
Right.
So you've got to have something interesting that keeps you invigorated at the same time as doesn't overwhelm. So it used to be I would never even contemplate anything where we were, that means that we would be doing potentially, we're dealing with some really big companies, but it means even maybe getting much larger contracts where the contracts themselves are several $1 million.
Hmm.
So then at some point, even my own unique ability as the salesperson has to be duplicated. So right now, I'm kind of filling in a lot of jobs around me so I can do what I do best, but then I have to multiply even what I do to other people. So it does definitely change your mindset a little bit, because now, even with the team, it's like, yeah, I know that we're going to stress out about this one project, but what we're trying to do is to build the system so that when we had 15 of those projects, we don't get overwhelmed by it, that things just kind of go as they should go. And so what's happening on our team is we started out with some generalists who could basically do a lot of different tasks. And now what I'm seeing is some specializing. And now even one of my team members that I just added is going to be looking at how to add additional resources under her so that I don't have to worry about adding the resources. She can go and farm out the work. Because I think many of us, if we have a task to do, we'll, consider jobbing it out, or
Right.
using a virtual assistant. And I'm looking at now at someone who basically can find those resources as needed, so I don't have to get involved in that.
So this is the difference, I think, between hiring, and I don't know who said this. I heard it from Rachel Hollis, hire generals versus soldiers.
Yeah, I like that.
That's kind of
Yeah,
a neat phrase, right? When you're
yeah,
hiring generals, generals can get the job done, and you don't necessarily need to know how the job is done. Soldiers are the people doing the job.
yeah.
And
I know.
so,
Yeah, I think you have to get so the one little wrinkle in this is there's probably a difference if we're talking to someone who has just got to that, 50,000 or $75,000 of income level. Don't be so quick then to go and spend 25 or 35,000 on some staff. I think, you may need a little bit of help, but those will be on contracts. I think, when you get above the 100K level and you're moving up pretty well from there, then you really want to start looking at where would I invest my dollars. And again, it's probably going to be with a virtual assistant of some kind or a specialist. I also have this thing, where I still want to work out of my home mostly or work wherever I want. And so I've decided that even on growing this business potentially, to 10 times, I don't want an office that I have to go to, or
mhm,
I don't want to have to be there so that my presence invigorates the troops or not, because I want the freedom and the flexibility to work when I want, where I want. So you need a mature person, in my case, to be able to handle that, who's quite happy to work on their own and doesn't need me in there to motivate them particularly to do their job. I have learned, though, on the flip side of that is I do have to make myself available for conversations. And so the things where I used to do haphazard, like, yeah, we'll talk when we need to, now we have regular meetings to set
yeah,
that up, and it helps get everybody on the same page. And then as one of your recent podcasts, you talked about tools and technology. There's a lot of ways to leverage that, but it's one of those moving targets where, you think a tool is going to do everything for you. It often doesn't by itself. So then it's what collection of tools is going to be your
hmm
best solution
right.
at the time.
Even
Yeah,
with Infusionsoft, I mean, I don't know how many add-ons you have, but I have a ton of
too many.
add-ons that I've had, and that's all your monthlies going up. But one of the things that we've talked about, and this is where we'll just start to wind down here. One of the things we've talked about is making decisions from the place where you already are earning the income that you'd like to go. Now, you may
Yeah,
not be ready to say, okay, I'm going to start making financial decisions like I'm already earning $100 million.
no,
No. But if you said, okay, in order to get to five from
yeah.
one, I need to make some different decisions. I need to maybe invest a little more over here than over there. That's one of the things that I have found to be really, really helpful.
Oh, for sure. I think, you know, you are going to, I mean, our industry is one where you tend to reinvest a lot of probably what you bring in, maybe more than you should sometimes. But,
Hmm.
there are times when you have it, obviously, get yourself into hopefully stable income. Put a nest egg aside so that you're not worrying about paying your bills in 30 days or 90 days. And then after that, it starts saying, okay, you're going to put some cash into play here, but you're going to do it with the hopes that, I say hopes because you don't know any of these things for
For
sure.
sure.
These are all bets that you're making, but you're making them based on some success that you've had, and inevitably some bets are losing bets, and you're just trying to see if you can get them so that more of them pay off. The one thing, again, because some people might be listening and go, oh man, I can't even dream of getting a multi-$100,000 agreement or contract with somebody. And said, I didn't think so either. So you have to be open, and when it comes, you'll find that it builds your confidence level. The other thing it does, honestly, it just takes away some of the thrill of the next one. I mean, I still get excited, I'm still thankful for it, but it's now a little bit routine. And I think that's not meant to sound conceited or arrogant. It's just that when you get the next one, oh yeah, okay, we got that one too, but we kind of now are in an expectation mode where we should be getting them, and now it's
Right.
like, how come we aren't getting another one or two a year? Because that would help us, get that sales growth curve going up.
Right, right. Well, one of the things, when you are taking a risk, you're doubling down on something that you probably already think works. If you are getting money back from your Google AdWords or from your LinkedIn AdWords, you're just going to in order to scale, you're going to start ramping it up and spending more and spending more. And a lot of people, I mean, I bet you could not imagine spending that much each month today, 10 or 15 or 20 years ago. It was probably unfathomable. But when you think about it, you've probably already 10 times your business,
Oh yeah. Yeah,
right?
for
And
sure.
so when you look back, that's what gives you the confidence to be able to recognize, oh, wait a second, I could 10 times my business because guess what? I've already done it once. Or maybe in your case, maybe it's more than once. That's
Well,
amazing.
yeah, you've hit on this in the past too, where I guess formally people will call it the imposter syndrome, and I know you've had podcasts on that.
Hmm.
At some point you have to look at your own track record and say, okay, this has gone well and this happened and this was good and this wasn't a fluke. This wasn't total
Yeah,
luck. It'll feel that way the first time, but it came as a result of something
hard
you've done
work.
or how you've been positioned. And you should say, okay, that's we've reached another plateau or level here. And what will we do? And it's not always the exact same things. I think people make the mistake in saying exactly what you did to get to where you are isn't
Right.
exactly what you need to go up to the next level, and we've talked about that. I
Hmm.
think it's honestly looking at how good you are at doing certain things and say, okay, how do we tweak that? And I really believe it's all a big experiment, right? We don't know whether all the money that we've put into different things will work 100%. So like with my team right now, we're on this quest basically to figure out that sales funnel. It's working obviously pretty well, but we've got to find a way to amp it up a bit more, and that means we're going to be spending until we figure it out. And then we're going to, I said, once we figure it out, we'll put even more resources behind it
Yeah,
because we know that it works. But initially I'm still a little cautious because nobody really wants to waste money. But
sure.
it's like some of it is just, what, we're making these bets and we're investigating these opportunities to see how we could take them forward. And I think at any step in your business, from its early days to its really bigger scaling, and not everyone, by the way, should scale. It's not for everybody. People even ask me, why do you want to make the business bigger? It's like, it's not for any ego reason. It's just like there's just an opportunity there. I want to see. It's a fun game to see what could we do and how big could we get.
Yeah, what if I could play even bigger? What if I thought I was playing big right now, and as it turned out, I could go way bigger? And so, for those of you who are just maybe starting out, and you've stumbled across our little podcast here by accident, I just want you to know that Greg and I have both been at the very beginning. Of course, he's blown past me now in his millions and millions and millions of dollars of contracts. But I just think that it's really important to think about what does playing big really look like for me? And if I am kind of playing a little bit small and safe, how much fun would it be? Okay, so what if I say, all right, I'm going to earn $1 million next year. What if I crap out at 800,000 and I'm like, oh, poor
That's
me.
terrible. Yeah,
Oh,
exactly. See,
who cares, right?
this is the thing, though. This is why, there's obviously pros and cons to goal setting, right? And you know that goal setting to some degree can have a downside because you hit whatever your goal is or you don't hit it. I
Hmm.
just think, we're moving through different milestones, and it's just opening up your mind to bigger possibilities and not assuming. I think the problem is people say, oh, to be bigger is more headaches, and then I won't be doing what I love.
Right.
I found that as you get bigger, you can do even more of what you love because you get rid of all the annoying tasks that you don't really enjoy, and other people like doing those things.
Right, right. And it's true. I think that that's probably the key reason why most people don't go for it is because they think it's going to be more headaches, but you're right. And I do really believe mindset is a massive part of this. Stu McLaren talked about it at Amy Porterfield's deal that I just went to about how he would bump his head up against this 400,000 K mark and that his little inner voice would say, oh, Stu, getting a little, he's Canadian. Oh, Stu, getting a little big for your britches there, Stu. This, I don't think you should be earning this much. And then he kind of realized that his mindset was doing that for him, and he's just blown. And you know what I think was part of it? One of the things that he and his wife Amy do now is they go over to Africa and they build schools for kids. I think Stu needed more of a reason to earn the money. He needed to tap into his real purpose in life. And he's the one who developed Wishlist Member, which was a
Yeah,
membership platform that I used. And
yeah.
he does all things membership nowadays. Anyway, I don't know. I just really think that once you tap into your why, that can really be combined with your uh, playing big idea, and then the sky's the limit, right?
Yeah, and I think, the cautionary note is you can fixate on the dollars, and certainly if you're not making the income you need, then you worry about that, right? But you know, as we've both learned, when you are only chasing the dollars, it becomes this problem because now there's actually irritation embedded in it. In our case, we're just trying to make bosses better so that more employees don't have a bad boss to work for.
Yeah.
And it's in our case, it's such simple concepts that turn somebody from being a bad boss into a good one. We just want to get that message out to more places so that more people aren't complaining about their bosses as much anymore. So we've learned to love supervisors because they're at the front lines, they're doing things, they're very practically minded. So we're just trying to make them better. So in that case, there's lots more supervisors that we haven't trained, and even though we've got this nice little niche, there's way more room to run within this lane. And again, you were very helpful to me in the days when we were kind of paring it down. And everyone on this call who's either not done that yet or has finally figured all that out, you just realize that the fear you have of narrowing down your specialty, eventually you're going to go, I should have done it a lot sooner and gone deeper. And you know but I have trouble advising somebody who's starting out because it might not be easy. I know you help people do that, but it's like it's not always easy to know exactly what your lane will be, and you can't always figure it out 100% before you do it
Yep.
because you're market testing it. And when you really know you've got it is you've got a lane that has gives you the lifestyle that you want and the results you want, and hopefully category of one type of thinking where you want to be the one not playing in a very busy field with tons of competitors where you're sniping over contracts and pricing, and now you're the one, it's just you and someone else. Really, there's no one else to look to who does what you do for who you do it. And that's the thing we all aspire to, and hopefully you pick right so you don't hate it when you get there.
Yeah.
Because you could do it just to be lucrative, but you really have to do it because you could see yourself living in that lane potentially for a very long time.
Right, right. And our goal is to have you pick a lane that puts you at the crossroads between passion and profits.
Yeah, for sure.
Because if you don't have passion for it, then it is going to be a slog. And I'm glad that you shared your why with us, Greg, because that's a really important piece of your own journey. Greg Schenkel, thank you for coming back on the podcast today. Now, I bet you there might be people listening in who think, "Ooh, I could go do some training for him. I've got a little bit of time in my schedule." What should they do if they want to reach out to you?
The best way is through the website at uniquedevelopment.com. You can reach me there, and my email is gschinkel@uniquedevelopment.com. And of course, I'm on LinkedIn. That's another good way to make connections. I will say that it's not that I need to recruit dozens of instructors at any given time. These
Mhm.
things tend to ebb and flow, and
Right,
because I look for people who are already, at least earning some of their own money on their own, because I don't want them to worry about whether they can feed themselves based on what I might give them.
right.
So I'm looking for people who are already established, who are looking to add, some days to their calendar, and my job is just to make that as easy and seamless for them as possible.
Beautiful. Well, Greg, thank you so much for being on the show. We'll put all of your contact information in the show notes over at speakerlauncher.com. And with that, we will say thank you so much for tuning in. We have been growing and growing and growing. This little podcast is like the little engine that could, and it's all because of you all sharing it with your friends, your fellow speakers, letting them know that this is a show that we really talk about going big. All right, with that, we will say thanks for being here. We'll see you soon, wealthy speakers. Bye for now. Hey, thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed our show, you'll want to come and visit us at the Wealthy Speaker School, where we provide a proven roadmap for building your dream business. Go to wealthyspeakerschool.com. And for show notes for today's podcast, head on over to speakerlauncher.com and click on podcast. I'll see you soon, Wealthy Speakers.